Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Price and Value Journey. I'm John Ray, and I'm excited to welcome a friend of mine, a guest that truly understands the transition from corporate life to entrepreneurship and all the issues, challenges, hopes, dreams, triumphs, funk that goes along with that. That's a word he used lately that I really loved. Chris Lalomia is with us, folks. He's the owner of the Trusted Toolbox. You're the largest handyman service in Atlanta, right?
Absolutely.
I want to make sure we get that out.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not right just now, successful.
I think one of the top 3 in the nation because I've been looking for other people my size.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. My notes say a successful handyman service. I think it's a little bigger than that. So congratulations on that.
Thanks.
But Chris not only has built a tremendous business, but he's also shares his wisdom, knowledge through a podcast. He's the host of the Small Business Safari podcast. And I love that metaphor because, yes, it's a safari out there, folks. And he's the author of From the Zoo to the Wild, where he shares his journey of leaving the structured corporate world to build his own business. Chris Lalomia, welcome to the Price and Value Journey.
I'm looking forward to this, John. We've talked quite a bit, so I know you laid out all those other terms or adjectives in the beginning, but funk is the first one.
Well, I love From the Zoo to the Wild.
Yeah.
When you think about that metaphor, it's a really good one. And maybe we could start there because at the zoo, everyone's confined, and some of these folks some of those animals out in there have never been out in the wild. They're just used to being in that cage and getting fed all the time.
Absolutely. The zoo metaphor in the corporate world, I know as we're all going back into business or back into the offices, is exactly what I said. I had a corner office. And man, I was the king of my zoo. I was a big dog. I was use any animal you want. And the one that hit me was when I took my kids to the Atlanta Zoo and I saw the gorilla in his habitat, in quotes.
Yeah.
And it was this big concrete cage with a tire in it. And he could go out into his habitat. And he was sitting in there waiting to get fed bananas. And I said, look at this guy. And
right.
Of course, I used the wrong metaphor. I called him the king of the jungle, but I know that's supposed to be the lion. But I looked at him. I said, man, he is just sitting there getting fed his bananas, and he thinks he is it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I can't believe that. And I'm strolling away with my daughter, and I went, oh, I think that's me. I don't even know what it's like to be out in the wild. I don't know how to do all that stuff. And the skills I have built up for corporate America, I don't know if there's going to translate to out there when I had to forage for my own. But I've always wanted to do it. I've always had that passion, but when you're in the zoo, nobody ever says, I hate getting paid every 2 weeks. I hate that somebody pays half of my benefits or all of my benefits. I hate that somebody's giving into my 401k. Nobody ever says that. But when I told people I was going out to start my own business, everybody says, oh, I wish I could be you. Oh, I wish I could do that too. And I'm like, yeah, the difference is you don't really, because you still like your paycheck. You still like your 401k. You still like your healthcare being paid for. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of safety in working in the corporate world, but there's a lot that comes with it.
For sure. So you were pretty self-aware to understand that you were the gorilla. Yeah, because a lot of people that come from corporate, they don't know they're the gorilla.
I think you're right. Looking back on it, I was in that corporate world and it was pretty successful. And to be fair, that's one thing I've learned as being your own boss for the last 17 years. You're not bragging. You just got to be really truthful. Right. Because I'll tell you exactly how many times I've screwed up. We'll get into all that. But yeah, I was pretty good at the corporate world. I was pretty young. I had a successful journey. I was in a good spot doing things, but I just didn't feel like I had used my brain fully was the big thing. And you're right, looking at the gorilla now and thinking about it, knocked down the walls for me. And like the Matrix, right, it fell down. And I was like, wait a minute, there's more to life than just doing this and becoming the CEO at the time I was at the bank. I never thought I would be that, a CEO of a large company. I just decided I really wanted to go see if I could do this on my own.
So you were at a major consulting firm. If you want to mention the name, you can. You were at a major bank, one of the biggest in the country, known bank. What about that move? How do I want to ask this question, John? Edit. What was it about being in those organizations that said to you, this is just not where I need to be, that I need to be an entrepreneur, and that's the only way I'm going to be fulfilled?
Yeah.
Because you self selected out, unlike most people that come out of corporate, or a lot of people that come out of corporate, that the decision is made for them. You did it on your own, and you did it earlier than a lot of the layoffs that have occurred over the last 10 years. Your business is, 16, 17 years old now.
I started it in 2008, right before the recession.
Yeah.
So timing, again, sucked.
Yeah.
I really whiffed on that one. Even though I had the wherewithal to know better, I still charged into the wilderness, if you will, and went on the safari. The thing that really told me, and I will tell you, the consulting firm I worked for is Accenture, and it was an incredible business training tool and corporate environment for me. I learned so much there that I have still used to this day on how to talk with people and how to interact with people and set the tone. When I was there, we had what we called partners, and that I could see myself doing. We went public, and the partnership program melted away and became more of a corporate structure with the CEO and SVPs and I didn't see that working like I thought it would. And then when I went to work at the large regional bank, I never wanted to be the CEO of a bank. I definitely love leadership. I love working with people. I love developing people. And I thought I could do it in a larger firm, but I was more worried about being 60 years old and not knowing if I had the chops to do it. Being an entrepreneur, starting it on my own. And I wasn't going to start necessarily, I wasn't going to have to start on my own, but I was going to buy one in 2007 before the recession hit. But the valuations were so stupid crazy that people were asking for way too much. So I decided to start one on my own, and it's hard. It's a lot harder starting from scratch, even with a great idea. And so that's probably one of the biggest things I learned. We talked about that before.
So what were the mind shift? You talked about this mindset shift in terms of using this gorilla metaphor, right? But that you recognized that before you left corporate.
I did.
Right? So what were the mindset shifts that you had to make after you left corporate that you didn't realize were coming?
Yeah. First of all, I had an executive assistant. When my computer didn't work, I would just walk out there, tell her to get somebody to fix it, and I'd take off and go to a meeting. And I'd come back and it'd be fixed. If my printer didn't print, somebody would fix that. I had a lot of support at the bank before I left. And when I left, I was on my own. I was our IT department. I was our financial analyst. I was our bookkeeper. I was our chief marketing officer, chief revenue officer. And I was actually working in the field as well as a technician, so I could get a feel for how it's going to work and how it's going to do, because I'm pretty handy. The mindset shift there was really significant. And that was, instead of just telling people what to do, I had to go do it. That means hands on the tools, boots on the ground, things going. And I've always had a work ethic, but I did have to pick them up and put them down. I was working a lot of hours. But it didn't feel like it because it was your own business and you're trying to get it off the ground.
Sure. Now, being in corporate's not bad in terms of skill development. You referenced that. Talk about those skills in corporate that you're glad you had when you started your business.
Yeah, absolutely. The ones that really hit hard for me is, again, the segmentation and the process development. I knew that I had to have processes. I knew I had to think through things logically. Comes from my training in engineering, but it was also a big thing that I leveraged when I was in the corporate world. I realized that I was going to be working with people. I just didn't realize it was going to be in the retail setting, which I think I've told you that offline.
Right.
But I was able to adapt that and go learn. The things that the corporate world taught me was how to adapt and overcome and take on challenges. But also working at a bank or in a consulting firm, I realized that I had to have a customer mindset. And when I was selling consulting engagements, it was a relational sale. It was a little bit longer tail sale. It was a little bit more of finding out what the solution needed to be, but really understanding their problem and their pain points first, and then going through it. So what I've told everybody is that when I got to the handyman world, what was a long tail relationship building exercise became a quickie. I had to do it quickly.
Oh, gotcha. And that took some work to make a change like that in terms of how you think about people.
100%. Right? And I was a good salesperson. I wasn't a great one, especially in the home services world, because this is a different sales cycle. But back to where we are today, I have a 10-step sales process. I do have a sales manager. We do continually train our own sales, and that all came from my corporate background.
So many individuals that come out of corporate want to start their own business. In a lot of cases, they're doing it to rebel against process and structure, and they think if they have their own business, they don't have to do all that stuff. And You're cautioning against that, I hear.
100%. I've heard that same thing, and I will echo that. If you think starting your own business frees you up the shackles, if you will, from the zoo, and then you get to just do your own thing, I think a lot of time I read that as laziness. I read a lot of that as lack of self-discipline and lack of self-motivation. Mm-hmm. And those three things are deadly to an entrepreneur. If you don't have the discipline, the self-motivation, and the process to get through things, you're going to be lazy and not be working hard. I wake up every morning going, I'm about to solve some problems. Don't know what they're going to be, but I got to do it. And if I don't have that discipline to go out there and tackle them, they're going to eat me up. They're going to eat me alive. And I've seen a lot of people fail that way, is they come out and start and they think it's going to be like that somebody's going to fix their copier. Well, I'll just pay this guy to fix my computer. I'm like, that's $1,000, dude. That was one of the big things. I was running a $20 million a year budget at the bank. And I was going to running a $20,000 budget. And I realized very quickly that every dollar meant everything.
Right.
And that was hard. That was a hard shift.
Yeah.
Rounding errors for me at 20 million were whether or not I was going to keep my doors open.
This is one of these things, though, that I think business owners hear conflicting advice on, because they get criticized by service providers that say you shouldn't be doing that yourself. You need to outsource that, right? You need to focus, be working on your business, not in your business, and so forth. And there's a happy medium in there somewhere, right?
I 100% agree. I love it when consultants say that to you, and I believe truly I'm working on my business, but there are days where I work in my business. Today we're doing this podcast. I have 4 ladies in the office answering phones. I have 4 ladies who are now home with the flu. So guess who's going to go answer some phones after he's done with his podcast? So Chris isn't going to be working on his business, not going to be working on his big, hairy ideas. He's going to be answering phone calls. So there is a happy medium. And the other thing that you brought up that I learned was I believe you have to have enough capacity. And the capacity is twofold. One, your mental abilities and your work ethic and your problem solving. All that. The second is financial capacity. You need to have enough money to withstand a startup. And that money better look like a couple of years worth, because not everybody breaks even on a shoestring after 25 days and you just get magic lucky with one client. The other thing that I would say is that I had a pretty good amount of capacity and I got a little lax with it. And I did outsource some things in the beginning that I probably shouldn't have and brought them back in just because I needed to save that money. Yeah. Until I could get to those points. So, I mean, today I have a bookkeeper. Today I have an IT firm that protects all of our computers in our firms. I do have a fleet service that fixes all the vehicles. Yeah. But in the beginning, I was putting my own racks on my trucks and I was fixing my own computers and I was our bookkeeper. So yeah, as you grow, you can find it. But I think that's a evolution. That's not a first start.
One of the things we talked about offline, Chris, was that when you started your business, basically you had SCORE, and whatever mentors you could find.
And the library. I forgot to say that.
Okay.
Going into the library, looking up how to start a business. I bought the book, the Entrepreneurship MBA book. But I didn't have all these resources we have available to us today. Your podcast, my podcast, people out there with all kinds of businesses in a box or consulting services to help you, some free, some not even a lot of money to pay. Right. People who can evaluate. There were franchise consultants at the time. I did look at franchises. That was actually a very good exercise for me just to look at. And I still think that they're good ones. And there's some really good ones around here in Alpharetta as well. But yeah, we just didn't have the resources. And it sounds crazy. You want to date yourself and make yourself old. Use technology. Right? You will date yourself so quickly. I mean, you're here with you. I think you got a smartwatch on, and I've got an iPhone. And when I first started, I had a flip phone and a camera. Yeah, and I had a client server based CRM system, and I was way more advanced than other people. But I had my client and my server all in one on one laptop. Long story if you know that about the IT world. But
yeah, I had a car phone.
Nice.
Yeah.
See, it'll date you quickly.
Oh yeah, and that was like way ahead of where a lot of people were. That car phone.
Yeah.
Bolted in. You couldn't even get into the back seat with that thing.
I know some of the stuff we had. Yeah, just amazing. Just amazing how the technology has really helped thrive and help you thrive. If you want to start your own business today, technology has got to be a key component of what you're going to do, especially with this whole world of AI that everybody talks about that I've been trying to crack the nut on as well.
Yeah. You know, for sure. I want to come back to that, but I want to ask you about the mentor piece of this. How do you find mentors that are helpful?
Yeah, I love that question. When I have people ask me, Chris, will you mentor me? What do you think I hear? I hear you want free consulting.
Mm-hmm.
But so my challenge is, if you want to get people to mentor you, be entertaining, be energetic, and be pointed, and then get back to them somehow. Because what I did find, and I was also very hesitant in the beginning, was to reach into my industry for networking and mentorship. I stayed outside of my industry, feeling that nobody would want to share. Because back to the corporate world, one of the things that we talk about, but we really don't do, we don't share.
Right.
Even within the company.
Right.
Because if I give you my knowledge, my IP, my capital, then you can use that against me.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a mistake. And one of the things I would tell anybody who is in the world and coming out, people are a lot more giving of their time if you're going to be enthusiastic, energetic, and pointed. If you just say, can I buy you a cup of coffee? I'm not interested. If you say, hey, man, I want to pick your brain around marketing and what do you think AI is going to do for marketing? I think you color me all day long, man. I'll buy your coffee if you want to talk about that. But not just buying people lunch, not just buying people coffee. Ask them a pointed question and see if that gets them going. Because what I have found, and people like me and all the people I've met, we're willing to share. And you're the same way. I've seen you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about approaching people and knowing what to believe? Because like you for every 100 possible mentors, you can find about 250 opinions on something.
That's exactly right. I think one of the things I would say is you need to find somebody who's going to tell you, no, stupid, what are you thinking? Get out of here. Because if you're truly an entrepreneur, one of the things you're going to find about yourself that I found out about myself is that I'm actually very optimistic. I would have colored myself pessimistic before I started my business, but I'm really optimistic. And when I had this idea, I thought it was the best idea in the world. And I literally had 10 mentors. And of my 10, 9 said, this is a can't miss opportunity. You're going to kill it. And I love that phrase. You're going to kill it. And by the way, I didn't kill it. It took me 3 years to even break even. That's how bad it was going because I was advertising and building and investing and building and investing and building. And yeah, today, sure. Killing it? Not really, but we're doing all right. But 9 out of 10 said, great idea. 1 said, like it. However, because he had experience in the field, he goes, you might want to watch out for this and this. And by the way, he was exactly that, right?
Wow.
Employees were going to be hard to find.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to get people to buy and purchase your services for what you're doing because you're up against a very fragmented market and a bad perception of the term handyman.
So was that confirmation bias that was going along there?
So
to have those, what I'm getting at is those 9 people, you were much quicker to believe them.
Yeah. And I would say that the 10th guy, I sat there and went, man, this guy's an a-hole. And then I walked away and I thought about it. And I was like, he gave me the best advice because I already knew it was a good idea. Right. I wanted somebody to shoot holes in it. And so I would go, one of my mentors, I would just ask him just about marketing. One of them, I would ask him just about how much software should I do? One of them, financially, just ask them QuickBooks and how to do the bookkeeping and how to set up the LLC and all that other stuff, the admin of it. But you want those people who do that because you're going to think you're such a good idea. Nobody's going to talk you out of it. And you want people to shoot holes at you because you're going to be able to go that. And the other thing I would say is if you've got a partner, if you've got a spouse, is that you need to have somebody else convince them that it's a good idea, not you try to convince them it's a great idea. That was a big failure on my part. I told my wife, I'm like, listen, baby, I'm going to be a millionaire in 3 years. Don't you worry about it.
Yeah.
16 years later, not even close.
So that may be the biggest gold you lay on the table today, Chris, because that spousal support.
It's hard. Starting my business, we talk about funk, we talk about that. I don't want to get into all of it, but I am still married today, but it doesn't mean we have not had a lot of stuff to go through. She was very successful in her business. I was very successful in mine. And then I went out and started my own business with the promise that I was going to not only supplant my current salary, but I was going to exceed it by a lot. And while I've done part of it, I definitely sold her a bill of goods on a little bit too optimistic. Mm-hmm. I should have had somebody else come talk to her. And then somebody who's been through it and say, look, he's going to need help and you're going to need help. Right. And you guys he's not going to be able to tell you about your business anymore. Because as one of the phrases I've heard from one of my best mentors, Chris Hanks said, when's the first time you started lying to your wife? When you start your business. Because you walk in the door, she goes, "Hey, how's your day going?" When I start telling her, and she goes, "Oh, you should fire them. Why should they do that?" So now, how's the day going? Good. Yeah.
Fantastic, right?
Fantastic.
Yeah, the more hyperbole you lay on, the worse it really is.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's another hyperbole one. I love him.
Okay, so we've got to get to pricing.
Let's do it.
All right, let's talk pricing. So how did you initially set your prices when you started the Trusted Toolbox?
I did do some comparison shopping. I did have Handyman come give us estimates at the house. I actually also went to Discovery Day at the biggest Handyman franchise unit or franchisor in the nation. Mm-hmm. And I picked up their pricing from there. And I went out and started that way. And that sounds like, wow, Chris, you did a great job. I did. Mm-hmm. I did until I didn't. Because when you're a handyman and you're having everybody tell you you can't charge that because that's too expensive and you're up against every other handyman, you start bringing your prices down. And all it takes is just a couple whoopsies to really screw it up when you're first starting.
Yeah.
So in my case, the way I started, and that's what I would tell everybody, little jobs, little problems, little jobs, little losses. Big jobs, bigger problems, big jobs, bigger losses. Some of the big jobs I took on before I had my processes in place, I got my butt kicked. So my pricing, we talked about this, know your numbers. And I felt like I had a pretty good handle on it because I was running pretty lean. Mm-hmm. But what I was missing was when I was out there selling is I was starting to give away things that it wasn't hitting me. So my leakage was not necessarily in my labor, which is my biggest cost. It was in my materials. But I'll give you an example. We put in a 5-foot by 5-foot big window in a gated community here in Alpharetta. And my software pre-populated with 80 because that was my number. It was $80 an hour. I did not update the quantity. I sent the estimate. He accepted the estimate. I said, I can't do it for that. And he said, I have a signed estimate from you and I'll take you to court because you have it. I was too weak and not strong enough in my business position to go, you can do whatever you want, but I can't do that. Yeah. So I went and put in a 5-foot window for $80. Me and a guy a day, about a half a day to get it done because I got it all lined up. But I went and did it just to get it done. Yeah. Funny story is 12 years later, the window fogged and it went not from installation. Actually, it was because he had not kept up with the painting, but the window went bad. And he asked me if I could requote it, and I requoted it with my new rates. And he wrote back, "Wow, you've really gotten pricey." I'm like, "No, I just really got back to making money." I think the hard part, especially in home services, actually probably in everything, is that we undervalue ourselves and we actually sell against ourselves a lot more than we should. And we don't have the right number because you don't know your cost and your true worth and true value. But everybody here needs to make some money. And so, because if you don't, you're out of business. And what's the stat? 1 out of 10 businesses don't make it to the second anniversary. So you want to go out of business really quick and make people think you're great? Yeah, underbid, undercharge. But you got to know your worth. And you got to be able to deliver on that worth. That's the value of what you're trying to produce.
So at what point did the word value come into your mind when it came to pricing? Because what you're describing, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you're describing is you were basically on a cost plus model and you were trying to manage that margin the best you could. And then at some point, knowing what you're worth, quote unquote, value came into your lexicon when it came to pricing. What got you to that point?
In the beginning, remember I started in 2008, recession, handyman business, can't miss, right? I'm going to kill it. Go back to that phrase again. What I found out was that we all have a number if we have a spouse that we're going to spend without having to get consulting. You're not going to have to consult them, right? Hey, I'm going to go out and buy a new Ferrari. Probably need to talk about that with your spouse. Mm-hmm. You're probably not going to just go out there, plunk down the money and buy a Ferrari. Right. But spending $500 to get some stuff knocked out around the house, or even $1,000 to get stuff knocked out around the house, didn't think you need to have spousal support or consensus. Mm-hmm. But with the recession, I found out that number came down very quickly. So I took the word value out of my lexicon right away because I was just trying to stay alive and stay through this and figure out what's going on. Where I started to see it come back was in the tens. And the end of 9 and the beginning of 2010, people started getting money again. We are not a nation of savers. We're a nation of spenders. But now I had more money. Now I could start talking about value. So today we have a handyman for a half day and a handyman for a full day. We do very little on the hourly anymore. We do it on the half day and full day because we can provide more value to you as a consumer by doing more in your home for not a whole lot more money. Right. So that's where the value starts to work. And that has been where it's really unlocked for me. Starting in 10, we've been through a couple dips, but I still think here we are in 2025. The term value has got to stay there for us to survive and be successful.
What you're describing, Chris, is changes in perceived client value, and the value that the client, your typical client, your archetype client, perceives in your work, right?
Absolutely.
And so it has nothing to do with what you're worth, quote unquote. It's about their circumstances, their willingness to pay, their personal situations that cause them to see changes in perceived value of your service, right?
Absolutely.
And that's what a lot of business owners don't get about pricing and value.
100%. I'll give you 2 examples. One, I had a handyman in one of my friends' houses, because that's why I know how the story went down. And he was there to do a handyman for a half day, had finished all the work. It was in the right amount of time. Everything was right. My friend, who is now working from home because it's 2021, hasn't gone back, one of his doors wouldn't shut on the office and the kids could push it open. And he just wanted to see if we could fix that door. My guy knew how to fix that door. And we know that because we know how to work doors, and we're voodoo masters when it comes to doors. Mm-hmm. It takes us all of 5 minutes. Mm. Okay?
All right.
With the right tool, with the right screw in place and knowing where to put it. And he said, because I just got done telling everybody, when we get an add-on, it's at least $80. That's just what you do. And he says, I just can't do that for you today, sir. We'll have to. And so he hemmed and he hawed. And what my friend said was that he almost refused to do it because he didn't want to do anything that was outside of what you told him. He said, so I don't know what you're telling him, man, but because that's how this started. And I said, let's find out. And so I talked to my handyman, what's going on? And he says, I didn't want to charge him $80 to fix that door. I said, do you realize that guy probably would have paid you $400 to make sure that his kids could not come into that room when he was presenting to his entire team? Mm. And because that's what my friend said, Chris, how much more is it going to be to have somebody come out? I said, look, I'll just charge you what he would have charged you, which was $80. He goes, $80? That's it? He goes, man, I would have paid you guys $200. I don't know how you fix that door. I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
So that's one. The other analogy and thing I talk about is that I go to a lot of home service studies, and now we have these people coming online who we're working for called millennials. Bad term, John. Right. And they're 30 to 44-year-olds.
Yeah.
Okay. And the 30 to 44-year-olds are now buying single-family dwellings here in the Metro Atlanta market. And they don't want to be like their parents, but they are definitely, so back to my archetype, we call our avatar. Those people will sit in their home and order Uber Eats and not drive and go get their own food, but will gladly pay an extra $10 plus a tip to have their food delivered. Gladly.
Right.
Pay. So think about that value for a minute. So when I come in and tell you it's going to be $1,000 for a day for a handyman to knock out all of these things, let me tell you what you're going to get. You're going to get your weekend back. You're going to get your time back with your kids if you have them. You're going to get to go travel with your friends if you're young and upcoming and you're millennials and doing that. Or if you're older and you want to go play golf with the boys on the weekend and you don't want to have to do the work, look at the value I'm giving you. And oh, by the way, she's going to be thrilled. So that's how we pitch it and position it. And that value proposition has really worked because millennials are also bleeding into Gen X, because we as Gen Xers, that's what I am, are starting to see that maybe I don't have to work as hard as I thought I did. Maybe I will just pay this guy to have it magically all be done and go away. Yeah. So when I get home, I can go do what I want to do. And so that's where we're seeing is a lot more outsourcing happening in the home, which was the idea that I had written down in 2007. It just took this many years for it to really start working.
In a whole new generation that didn't exist, right? That didn't have a checkbook at the time.
Yeah.
To be able to come along and start helping you with that.
Believe it or not, I would tell you that working with millennials, it's a different mindset, but it's also, there's some benefits. Mm-hmm. Gen X on the edge of boomer. I'm still saying, I'm going to hold on to Gen X. What we found is that once you give them a price and you provide that value, they're thrilled.
Yeah.
And they're happy and they can go on and do that. What I found though is they need a lot of communication. They need a lot of expectation setting because they have absolutely no idea what you're going to do to them in their home. They really don't.
Right.
They don't know what drywall repair really looks like. And it's unfathomable in the beginning to me, because even my dad said, I don't know who's going to buy your business, because we did all this stuff ourselves. I was like, that's my point, Dad. I think going down in the future, a lot of guys are not going to DIY anymore. And that has proven out in Home Depot and Lowe's. Last year, their earnings were down because DIY was down again. And they are focused on us commercial guys now to make sure that we are spending our money with them.
Yeah, and they're trying to get in your business too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want me to sign up to do work for them through them.
Oh, and, lovely.
Yeah,
so they can control your pricing, right?
Right. Yeah. Speaking of pricing and value, yeah, we're not going to do that. So that's where I stick with mine. You bring up a great thing, and it's hard. Pricing is so hard because I still think it's more of it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I did it for a long time. And I would say every single time I've raised my rates, I've analyzed it and just absolutely stared at it. I didn't lose customers because of it. I didn't lose revenue. None of it. That was not where I lost them. I lost them if perhaps we didn't do a good job. Perhaps we didn't set the perceived value and the expectation up, and we did not exceed it like we were supposed to. Typically, what I found is it's in the quoting process is where I have my biggest problems. But in the delivery, I've had lots of raving fans.
So when you quote, it's one thing for you to be out there. It's another thing for your technician to be out there, your representative to be out there talking in terms of price and value. And you mentioned a story like that. So how do you train your people to think about their work the way the customer sees their work, not be selling out of their own wallet?
You just said it, selling out of your own wallet. Don't write the check for the customer is my phrase, selling out of your own wallet. Your phrase, same phrase, sorry, for the same mindset.
Yeah.
Twofold. One, you have to build the belief in them. One of the things that I have is I expect everybody in my company to be the face of my company. That's on my mission plaque. I don't have a mission statement, I have a mission plaque. So they can read it. It's easily to digest. When they're the face of the company, they will sell and do the work at their lowest level of belief. And so my job is to raise their level of belief on the artists that they are, the work that they can deliver, and the things that we're doing that actually make these people's lives better. And that changes the way we're doing it. Instead of just saying, I'm going to come out there and fix your drywall. I'm going to come out there and put that door in. I'm going to come out there and tile that backsplash. I'm going to come out there and add value to your home. I'm going to do some things that you guys have been wishing you could do, and it's a lot of stuff that we do. So I have got to train my guys, and I do that. That's where I'm very proud of the training that I've done to be able to get my guys to hopefully act like me. And that's actually one of the presentations I do is that I put up all of my guys and I put my face on every one of them to show everybody. It's
I love that.
My face is built for radio, that John, but I put my face on it. How do I get them all to act like me? Because if they act like me, they'll do all the things that I want them to do. And so that's really, it comes through training, but belief. I have got to get them to believe that what they're doing is truly going to benefit that customer.
Yeah.
Because none of my guys want to lie to anybody. I would tell you one of the things that I do know about the blue collar workers and the trades that I hire, that I keep, that have stayed with me, is that they are genuine. They're what you get.
It strikes me, we were talking about this before we came on, about the role of reviews. And congratulations on getting over 1,000 Google reviews. That's amazing. That's a landmark milestone you just passed. But it strikes me that's a great place for your people to understand the value that they deliver, that the perceived value that they deliver when they solicit those reviews and then read them.
Right.
Is that part of your goal? It's a marketing goal to get reviews, but is that part of why you solicit reviews so heavily?
So it's twofold, actually three. One, you're right. Google reviews, and this is what I talked about offline, is that, again, use technology to age yourself. Google was not there the first 3-4 years the way it is now. And in fact, when it first got started, it still wasn't there. Now you have a Google profile with reviews. Just like when you go to Amazon and buy anything, like to go buy your book or do whatever, you're going to look for reviews. People are using Google reviews. It's still 97% of the search is looking at the reviews. So yes, it's a marketing tool. Number two, I, as the owner, can't be there. So how do I know that they're putting my face on them as they're the face of my company? Mm-hmm. When I see a review, nobody's going to fake that review because, again, I know these guys are genuine.
Yeah.
They're going to only get reviews from people they think they've wowed, and they're trying to wow everybody. Mm-hmm. So when they get that review, I know I got a happy customer. So that's 2. I know I got a repeat customer opportunity because that's the other thing. Repeat customers are 40% of my business, and that is so key in my biz to work on. And 3, it validates that the work they did and the artistry they performed. When you think about all of us, many of us don't necessarily need a pat on the back, but we do need some kind of affirmation one way or the other. There's studies out there that love languages and do that and do this. And what we do know is that paying people isn't necessarily everybody's love language.
Yeah.
And in my case with my guys, think of them as like the guy playing the guitar at the bar. So when you go up there and drop $1 in there, he's validated. That's just $1. Yeah, but now he knows you liked his song. Or if you clapped hard, what do? They say thank you. Mm-hmm. So when these guys get that review, they get somebody clapping for them, saying, hey, you did a good job, because they need that, because they're artists. When they're going into that home and they're fixing that drywall, hanging that door, doing that voodoo that we do and getting all that taken care of, they get validated and go, hey, I actually did something. They were happy with me and excited that I was able to finish stuff for them.
Something else I'm hearing there is just terminology. You're calling these men. They're
all men.
Okay.
I've had some women in the past.
Okay. Okay. You're calling these professionals, you're calling them artists as opposed to handymen.
Correct.
That says something about the value that they deliver and puts it in the middle, right between their ears.
It does. And I use that phrase from St. Thomas Francis of Assisi from the 1500s. He said, if you work with your hands, you're a laborer. If you work with your head in your hands, you're a carpenter. Now, many of my guys feel like they are a carpenter, which is a great trait.
Yeah.
But his last thing is, if you work with your head, your heart, and your hands, you're an artist.
Oh, wow.
And that's my challenge to the guys. It's up in our training room when we talk about it. Because if you think about it, if I went out to your house to wow you as an artist, I'm going to do a little bit more. I'm going to probably clean that caulk line just a little tighter. I'm going to make that paint line maybe just a little bit crisper. I'm going to make sure that when I'm done, you aren't going to see fingerprints on my window that I put up. That's being an artist. That's having that attention to detail. That's what sets us apart, and that's what gets the reviews, the repeat business, and then the gratification. And
wow.
I've told those guys that and it's hard because the other days, it could be 21 degrees outside. It could be 102 degrees outside. But if you think of yourself as an artist, you're going to push a little harder and have that determination to finish something. If you think you're just the tool in the field that Chris sent out there, I'm just here working for a paycheck.
Yeah.
You're just not going to put your heart into it. So that's our challenge, and we talk about that quite a bit.
Wow. Wow, I'd love to keep talking about pricing and value, but I want to get to something else while we have time to talk about it. And that is something you brought up recently on your Small Business Safari podcast, which folks you need to listen to. Put it in your subscription rota. You talked about feeling I guess the show itself was released early this year, early 2025, but you were talking about how you felt toward the end of 2024. You used a highly technical term. You ran a funk, right? You've been in business for 16, 17 years now and this is not what I guess a lot of people, I would think, are expecting a guy like you to say, right? Because they see 1,000 Google reviews and they see all the great things you're doing from the outside, the podcast, your book, all the great work you do. They're not expecting Chris Lalomia to be in a funk.
Back to being, you mentioned this in the beginning, being self-aware. I feel like that's one of the things I'm good at, but I love doing the podcast with Alan Wyatt, who is a commercial real estate agent here in the Atlanta area. If you ever need commercial real estate needs, he's doing this for free for me.
Shout out to Alan.
Yeah. Thank you, Alan.
Yep.
He's been my partner in crime for over 3 years now. Yeah. I got into a funk. And how did it happen? I started analyzing where we're going to be. In 2024, we contracted. We did not expand. And I knew why. There's not a lot I could do about it. It was the economy. It was a confluence of a number of things. I had economists. I knew it was coming, just didn't make it any better. And it felt like for all my efforts, for everything I had done, is that I couldn't overcome that. Mm-hmm. So yet again, being optimistic, I still thought that we could at least hold our own or grow 3%. And I couldn't. I actually lost. We actually were down 17%. Because the first quarter was just brutal. And again, it was economy driven. I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling you guys the truth. I could I could try to advertise myself out of that, but the advertising wasn't going to work. We tried some other things, but I just started to doubt some of the things I'm doing. I'm like, if I'm putting all this time in there, and I've got big, lofty goals for myself. I see the next big thing for the Trusted Toolbox, and I see the next big thing for the Trusted Toolbox of Athens, and I see the next big thing for Chris Lalomia, and doing things with my podcast and other things. And here I am trying to figure out how to make sales happen. And maybe I'm not training the sales guys the right way, and maybe I'm not getting the right conversions. Maybe I'm not doing the right advertising. And I really had a lot of self-doubt. And it started to become so overwhelming that it was hard to get out of bed. It became so overwhelming that it was easy just to turn on the TV, grab a glass of bourbon, and watch TV. I stopped scheduling podcasts. I stopped scheduling people to come on, which is my up. That's my, you want to talk about fuel. People ask me, hey, can you make any money off that thing? I'm like, I don't know. They go, why do you do it? I said, do you like golfing? Yeah. I said, that's 4 hours. And I like golfing too. I said, but I spent 2 hours with my buddy talking about all the things I love doing, which is business. And, oh, by the way, I learned some stuff. I love doing that stuff. But I started to not do that. I started to not fill up my joy bucket and started to really not have the pity party, but I had the apathy party. I was in the funk. I was supposed to be working on analyzing the pricing, analyzing what we're going to do. How was 2025 going to set up, start signing up for all these advertising mechanisms of vehicles and all this stuff. And now I'm a co-host on a local radio show talking about home services.
Let's call that out for people that need to know here in Atlanta, the Atlanta area.
Yeah, it's the All Four Seasons Home Show, sponsored by the Trusted Toolbox on Extra 106.3. You can get it in the app. If you're in the Marietta area, you can pick it up, but man, it's a small signal. But we're starting small. They've been doing it for 7 years. They asked me to come on and be the next voice, and then asked me if I'd like to sponsor it. And I'm like, absolutely. So I had a lot of good things going for me. We're on the cusp of 1,000 Google reviews. And I don't know if everybody understands just how big of a deal that is for me. I actually start tearing up when I think about getting there, because I just never thought we'd get to that number. I really didn't. And so it was such a milestone. But I was in a funk. I was just really down. And I told Alan, I'm like, hey, let's just do a podcast, you and me. And I was starting to come out of it a little bit and starting to get back at it, because again, when you wake up every morning, I got to solve some problems. I got to have the discipline to go to the gym, do my workout, get after it, get the happy endorphins rolling through me again and get going. And so I worked myself out of it, and Alan helped. But yeah, why was I in that funk? The contraction, the long run, have you made the right decisions? It just became so overwhelming. And you start asking so many questions of yourself and I didn't allow myself the grace to come back out of it for a while. And I started to give myself a break. Hey, give yourself a break on some of these things. You'll solve those things next week, but focus on this thing. Because right now you're trying to solve all of them at once. You're not doing a damn thing. You weren't getting anything done. And I just need to allow myself a little grace that I couldn't solve it all at once.
Did you need someone else to tell you that, though? To give yourself some grace, or were you self-aware about that?
No, that one, I have two things. Yes, I have been to therapy. I'm not currently in it, so that's a big thing for men to say. But yes, I have been through that, so that helps me. But I'm also part of a mastermind group that meets monthly, and it's a CEO group, other people running their businesses. And I have a couple of good, close friends in there that I was able to talk it through a little bit and process the process the issues, and that helped me a lot, because it's a lonely thing what we're doing.
Right.
When you run your own business, that's one thing I didn't bring up. It's lonely. You don't get to tell your wife how the day is going, and you're like, you have the wrong wife. Guys, trust me. If you're running your own business, you come home and start telling them all the myriad of issues you work through. People just don't get it unless they do it as well. And so that's why you can't tell your employees, because they all think you're killing it. Yeah. You can't talk to other people who, if they're not close enough to your business, because they're going to think you're killing it, or they're going to tell you how they're killing it. So it was a process. I think I'm in a better spot now. I wouldn't tell you I'm all the way back out. I'm still kicking myself on, because I love football too. So I did watch a little bit too much football over January and the weekends.
So you're a Lions fan, right?
I am.
Okay. No, that's an excusable thing. The Lions have been doing.
I was excited about that. Yeah. And so still, again, optimistic. I've never said that about the Lions, by the way.
That's right. That's right. But hey, what I hear in that, though, is that you had a couple of individuals, not the group itself, not the mastermind group itself. You didn't feel like you could come in and just unload on that group, but you had a couple of key individuals in that group you could pull aside and have a conversation with.
Correct. And I think for me in the therapy, that was a lot of other issues I had to work through. And again, nothing deep and dark. It just, sometimes you need somebody to talk to and get your head straight, because it is a mindset shift. And when you're in a funk, you're in a mindset. And you know what's the worst is that when you're in that funk, the clouds are over you. And I can talk to you, John, and John, you'll be sitting on the other side going, but Chris, the sun's right above him. And I'm like, no, John, all I see are clouds. No, Chris, trust me, the sun's there. So unless you're willing to see it, or somebody's going to help you break through those clouds to see that sun is on the other side, that's where you have to find those people you can talk to that talk your language. And that's where I've used this term grace, which I picked up from our faith, and it's a powerful one for me. And I had one of those guys say that to me, and it hit me there. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I do. I guess I do need a little bit. I just need to back up a little bit and get myself recharged and re-energized. And like I said, I'm working my way there. We'll be hitting our full stride. They'll come to spring. Trust me. If not, quickly.
Is it a matter of getting
small wins? That's a great line too. Is what does momentum look like? You got to build some mo. You got to get some mo. And yeah, I had to get some wins, and not just me. I had to get my sales team starting to convert a few. I had to get my handyman getting there. Getting to 1,000 Google reviews, that's some mo.
Yeah.
That's a big mo for the entire company. That one really got me charged up. And like I said, it's a big deal. So yeah, you got to find those little wins, because you got to build that mo, and you got to recognize that you did it. Not rest on those laurels, but recognize it. You got to acknowledge them. And that's one of the things in a funk you don't do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wow, this has been fantastic. If I can, I just want to ask you a couple more questions about the business itself and about you. So any other advice that we need to give business owners while we've got these mics on? You've really laid some, I said gold, I think platinum advice out here. So thank you for that.
Awesome.
But anything else, particularly around pricing?
Yeah, I would say one thing is know your numbers is a phrase. And I hate when people say that because it sounds so trite, but you've got to get into, if you use QuickBooks or financial accounting software, you can't look at them daily and see a trend. So if you want to do trend analysis, I have found that I need at least 3 weeks for a trend, and I definitely need a month and 3 months to look at another trend. So that's where one thing I have to do, because a lot of times when I was the inputter and the analyzer, I would be analyzing before the inputter was finished, and I would either be really excited or really depressed, especially if you started on the revenue input and then the expense input.
Yep.
Know your chart of accounts, understand where they go. You want them to jump off that table and tell you where your big nuggets are. You're 80-20. You're wherever those are going, that's big. But my big one will be this. I said it before, and I know I got you to laugh, but it's true. You want to bring me your business plan. You want to tell me how you want to grow. You want to tell me how you're going to do things. My question back to you is, if you can do all that with half the revenue and double the expenses, you got a good idea. And if you can't, then you better go back to the drawing table, because that's how pricing is going to work.
I'm part of a mentor group for emerging entrepreneurs on this 2 days from now. I'm taking that your line, courtesy of Chris Lalomia, folks. That we're talking about business plans on Thursday night.
We call that stealing with pride in consulting world. I love it.
That's right. I'll give you credit for it, though.
I love it.
Yeah. What's next for you in the company?
Yeah,
big goals.
Yeah, big goals. Here in Atlanta, I've hired a general manager. So I'm very excited about that. And that next evolution of where I want to go back to leading people. I have the Athens branch. We did not break even last year. We should have. We did not. Another funk point for me.
Yeah.
But my general manager up there is on it, and he knows it. And we've already had a great kick butt January. So that's been awesome. Where I'd really like to see the Trusted Toolbox is I don't want to franchise the idea. People have asked me that a lot. I think it would have been franchisable. I just don't believe in that model for what we're doing. There's a lot of them out there. The thing I really want to be able to do is hook up with some of these larger firms that have heating, plumbing, and electric already in established communities, and see if we can't be the handyman addition to them and be a concept that could be the platform for them to develop, because what I'm seeing is the roll-ups are starting to happen across cities.
Yeah.
They're aggregators across cities, and I want to see if the handyman isn't a good concept for them. So I have a one-pager on that, and I'm going to actively start building my community, which we talked about offline, and then start working on putting that notion out there that this is something brand new. Nobody's ever done it. Everybody's told me so far, seems like a dumb idea. and nobody's ever done it before and don't know how you're going to sell it. So you know what I heard? Let's go forward.
You heard everything you need to hear, right?
Yeah, everything I needed to hear. So I'm going to go give that a shot. For me, what I'd love to see is that get implemented and be part of the implementation process. And I'd like to see this thing be nationwide, or as best it could. Nationwide is going to be a little difficult in our world with all the different regulations. And then eventually I want to start giving back as well. Mastermind groups and consulting. I want to keep the podcast going. Mm-hmm. Probably kicking around the idea of another book talking about what it's like to scale the mountain and all the pitfalls that go coming up there, doing all that and all the different things. Everything's just linear, and it's just not. And there's a dip. I just had another one. After 16 and a half years, I dipped, and that didn't feel good. But you know what? When you're going up Mount Everest, I don't know if you follow the path and how they do it. Sometimes they got to go down to go up, and I'm hoping that this down is going to mean a big up.
I love that metaphor. I climbed Mount Rainier. You can't tell by looking at me, but about 25 years and 30 pounds ago, I climbed Mount Rainier, and I believe that, what you said, because you go down and up several times, and I realized that the truth of that metaphor.
Yeah.
The other one is you can get to the top, but you got to get back down. The top's only halfway.
That's a great point. Oh, that's a good one. Ooh.
You like that one?
Yeah, I might steal that one back.
That's what one of our guides said, and he said, man, you better save something to get back down.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good one. I like that.
Hey, this has been fantastic. I can't tell you how much free consulting I've gotten of this podcast. No, but seriously, if folks are listening to this, they know. The folks I feel sorry for are the ones that haven't listened to this.
Yeah.
So thank you for this conversation. But let's get to the most important question for me, which is how folks can find you, particularly if they want to know about your podcast, want to know about your book, and if they need handyman services. Yes, I'm one of those 1,000 reviews. The Trusted Toolbox, they're fantastic. They do a great job. Shout out to Brian, who just came out to my house recently. How can they find out about you?
Yeah, so there's only one of me out there, Chris Lalomia, Lalomia, but you can always email me, chris@thetrustedtoolbox.com. That's thetrustedtoolbox.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Insta, Facebook, believe it or not, even TikTok, even though I'm not doing much with that right now. But we have the Trusted Toolbox profile out there, a lot of social media going on. But yeah, check us out. The Small Business Safari, The Zoo to the Wild is the book. I'm giving you a lot of stuff. Just remember, Chris Lalomia. I'd love to connect with anybody who wants to.
And we'll have all this in the show notes, folks. Chris, thanks again so much. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, I love talking with you. You know that.
I appreciate this. Hey, folks, thank you for joining us. And if you have found this episode helpful, share it with others. And if you haven't found it helpful, you haven't been listening, in my opinion. But anyway, that's just me. And hey, if you're not a subscriber, don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. If you'd like to connect with me directly, you can email me at johnray.co. That's johnray.co is the email address. And if you are a consultant, coach, accountant, attorney, you're in some other services discipline, and you're struggling with the value you offer clients and expressing that value, I've written a book that's just for you. It's called The Generosity Mindset, A Journey to Business Success by Raising Your Confidence, Value, and Prices. You can learn more at thegenerositymindset.com. So for Chris Lalomia, I'm John Ray. Thank you for joining us on the Price and Value Journey.